or still in college, undergrad. Amazing. In industry, professionals. Thank you. And how many in grad school? Okay, thank you. That's great to know. So hopefully the goal of my presentation today will be to give you some understanding of the way Internet of Things started out and is evolving. It will be at a very basic level. I can go much more technical for those of you who want more technical depth, but I will leave the technical depth for the question and answer period so that you can quiz me on it as to these are the sort of questions that come to your mind. The hope at the end of the presentation is to get you thinking about the whole area and to get you to think about what are the new products that you can develop or take forward as you progress in your professions. So one disclaimer I would like to add is that I'm a researcher at Microsoft Research, but nothing in this presentation voices the opinion of Microsoft. These are my independent opinions as a researcher. Thank you. So I will begin at this point. Give me 1 second. I can see only half of my presentation. Sorry about the interruption. So what you see in this picture is a snatching of devices that are connected to the internet that we already see in the market. These devices range from, on the right, you are seeing devices which are thermostats or bulbs. On the left, devices which are some sort of coupons on the phone, and I'll talk about each of these things, and then some healthcare things, and then the car itself. So these are things that we are already starting to see in the market. So what does this mean? Well, if you look at the technology trends, it is forecasted that the Consumer Electronics Show next week will have almost a majority of the devices which will be from Internet of Things, basically Internet-connected devices. And it is also forecasted that almost 140 billion in the next 5 years will be spent on this particular field. And among major industries, Intel, Samsung, Qualcomm, Broadcom, Microsoft, Google, all of them are hoping to capture some part of the market share by developing IoT platforms or developing devices that can be part of the IoT itself. So there is a lot of excitement in the market about IoT or Internet of Things, as we call it. So what is really Internet of Things, and why do we care about this now? So this graph, you don't have to look at the specifics in this graph, but what this graph is hoping to elaborate to you, and I'll go in more detail, is that we started out with personal computers almost in '95, where every person would go to a computer and work on a computer to make his life easier or her life easier. The number of devices or the number of personal computers grew at an exponential pace, doubling almost 1.3 times every year. Then we had the advent of laptops or tablets, which became cheap enough that people could access them, and this made life for, say, consultants very easy. Now you could have a computing device with you. And this was almost 2000 to 2011. They grew exponentially at an even faster pace. What enabled this fast-paced growth was that we could pack a smaller number of chips in the same area. This was the Moore's law. What we expect from 2011 to 2020 is that we expect almost 50 billion devices to be connected to the internet. And what are these sort of devices? What is changing now compared to what we had in, say, 2011? That's the thing that we are going to investigate. So what has really happened is that technology has reached its tipping point. What this picture is showing you is that starting from ARPANET, where the machines were connected to each other, to the point where they were connected through a web. to the point where now you had mobile devices which could connect to the internet. It gave rise to this whole revolution of social media or Facebook where you were connecting people, not just devices. But now what you can do is you can connect actual things, physical objects in our environment to the internet, and that really changes the way we think about things. For example, if you connect a thermostat to the internet, then you can remotely start controlling the heating inside your house. Or if you can connect your car to the internet, that means that if you are controlling a cab company, then you can suddenly manage your entire fleet over the internet. So it has enabled a whole set of possibilities beyond what we envisioned as businesses sitting on a computer merely. So physical objects were not connected to the internet earlier. And why has this happened is because, as I was elaborating earlier, we have cheap computing power, so we can pack a lot more computing power in a single phone. Your iPhone, or any smartphone that you have, is carrying almost at least 5 core, or the next generation phones will carry almost 8 core processors on their phone itself. What that means is that you're packing enormous computing power on the same chip. So you can do the amount of operations which a personal computer could do, or not even a personal computer could do back in the 90s on a single phone. You have a lot more sensors packed on the same phone. On the picture on the right, you see the number of sensors that are on iPhone. They range from your camera to a mic to something which can capture ambient light, an accelerometer which can tell you what is the acceleration in three-dimensional axis, a gyroscope which can tell you the speed of rotation. So, was there a question? So all these sensors, what they're giving you is a lot of information about the way a person is carrying the phone, and a lot more information than just the fact that this person can receive calls or receive text messages. Further, now there are all these health bands or fitness bands which have heart rate monitors or galvanic skin response, which can measure your stress level, or it can estimate what your heart rate might be. So all these things are starting to affect the amount of information you can capture about a single person. What is also amazing is that you have a large number of mobile applications in the market. So not only do we have a lot of information available from each user, and we can do amazing processing on this data, we have a lot of applications like something that can process this data together. Facebook is basically an application which takes data from each user and connects different people's data, puts it together in a single interface. But now, you've been hearing this term called big data. What that is doing is it takes the data of all the users, puts it in the cloud, and it spits out an answer saying, hey, your phone has this much power usage compared to all the other users. Or your home has more power usage than an average user. So it has a lot more ability. So this mobile application platforms have made this concept of putting together data with the cloud much easier. And energy has always been a constraint with any sort of mobile devices or sensor-based devices, but we're just entering the era where energy harvesting circuits might become commercially feasible, and we can actually do something cool with them. So we only used to have watches where you could not do, where you didn't need batteries, but now we can have many devices which will, or at least RFID tags which can do energy harvesting. So we expect these connected devices to enter all sort of realms, from smart home, healthcare, automotive industry, retail stores, advertising, and supply chain. What I would like to do next is walk through the examples of each of these areas. But before doing that, I actually want to turn the questions back to you as to what devices do you think would be most useful, and which device do you think which device do you think is least expected to be connected to the internet over the next 5 years? So By show of hands, I want some answers of which device you least expect to be connected to internet that exists in your physical environment. No takers? Really? Go ahead. Your refrigerator and microwave, okay. Go ahead. You know, it's a good idea. Okay, I will repeat because the answers from the audience cannot be heard by everyone. So one of the first answer was how fun it would be to connect your refrigerator and microwave to the internet. The second answer was to get your toilet connected to the internet. Any more answers? Yes. Toothbrush. That's a nice one. My dentist might require me to connect it to the internet in the future. More answers. Yes. Your sink. Kitchen sink or any sink? That's a nice one. That I have a hard time thinking of. House's foundation. Wow. Okay. That's a really nice one. Okay. The water flow. Okay. Any other takers for that question? Yes. You mean the gardening system? Irrigation system? What is the electronic component there? Fair, fair. So let me go through that list again. So we started out with microwave and refrigerators. If you've been to IKEA or, Sears more recently, I did go to Sears with one of my uncles over Thanksgiving, and one thing I observed was that Samsung or GE comes with this nice app, this small screen on their refrigerator, which has all these apps where you can play music and you can play radio or you can connect to news. And I totally expect that they might connect with RFID tags to something inside the fridge at some point. So it's not that far off though. Microwave, not yet maybe. Then we went to toilet. If you had airports, the toilets connected to internet is actually a feasible thing because sanitation inside, like whether the toilet was cleaned or not, that's something. How many times did it flush? That's something that they have to keep records of to keep it sanitized. For landscaping, actually in agriculture, there is a big shift towards having some sort of a sensor, irrigation sensor or soil moisture sensors to automate the process of monitoring your farms because that helps you monitor how the health of your crops is going on. I'm not sure how quickly that will take on to the point where it's economically feasible. Then we went on to something which was kitchen sink. I've hard time thinking about kitchen sinks right now, but water flow systems are, the heating systems are definitely being connected to the internet because heating is one of the major sinks of how electricity usage happens inside your house. So if your heating can be managed when you're away on a vacation, you want to turn off your heating remotely. Same for water flow in many places. So it gives you big energy savings. What is unclear at this point is who will pay for these devices. Like, should I pay or should the utility pay for having these installed in my house? So that was a great set of answers. Thanks for thinking about these. Let's run through a few examples to see what verticals do we expect to disrupt. So we talked about future home. Pretty much every device inside the home can be connected to the internet because we have availability of Wi-Fi or some sort of a wireless medium inside the home. What this picture shows you is a thermostat connected, a thermostat which is Nest, then a bulb which is connected through a Wi-Fi app to the phone, and then a drop cam, which is a camera sensor which will allow you remote monitoring of your home. So you can expect that the next generation smart homes can have camera sensors, can have kitchen appliances, and can have thermostats connected to the internet. But what you have to really figure out is how are these helping you? So thermostats means big energy savings. So when you go away from home, if you are traveling, if you are a professional who travels frequently, you want to remotely be able to turn off your heating but not enter a house which is completely frozen, especially if you live in a cold part of the country. Kitchen appliances mean that you can remotely turn on and off food that was, say, need to be heated or something like that. But camera sensors provide the most compelling example because intrusion detection or monitoring your kid has been something that every parent wants to be able to do, of course within privacy limits. But with DropCam, you can do detection of any intruders inside your home or retail store. And you can also monitor your baby if he or she has good childcare with the nanny. So all these open a set of possibilities inside our home of what can be connected merely by having a chip that can connect to Wi-Fi and some sort of a phone on the other end or some sort of a device on the other end that can collect that data. So this actually opens up a bigger possibility, which you probably heard about, called smart grid. Smart grid is the idea of connecting anything that uses electricity inside your home, most commonly just meters, to have automated readings be collected by the utility. So this is called as automated meter reading systems. Once the utilities can collect real-time information about how you're using your electricity, they can almost design smart buildings. They can forecast when to expect how much consumption, when to expect how much demand of how much electricity they should produce, and tailor their production of electricity based on that. What's fascinating is that this can actually also incorporate renewables in some of the interesting parts of the country where they're running some projects where they can incorporate, say, wind energy or solar energy in these systems. And the enabling factor is basically having that reading be collected in real time instead of having that reading be collected once at the end of the month. I'll go in a specific example for this particular case, but smart surveillance is another application area which is taking off really nicely. So I talked about inside the home, but just imagine that camera sensors are becoming quite prevalent all over, even in stores or in enterprises. So when you have a lot of camera sensors, what do you do with that video? Most of the time you just store that video and don't do anything with it unless something happens and then you go back to those video records and analyze them. But with these applications, with them connected to the internet, you can actually have triggers at the camera which can say, okay, this video needs to be uploaded and be seen by a human and say, was it an intruder or was this just a person whom we did not expect to see? So it opens a lot of possibilities of the way your life can become more productive, easier, but also for enterprises to become more efficient. On that note, one of the key areas which is where Internet of Things is really affecting our lives is healthcare. How many of you carry some sort of a fitness band to monitor your health? Nice. Most of us have some sort of a pedometer or some sort of a fitness band that can record how many steps you take. So you have a device that's connected to the internet, records the number of steps, your sleep patterns, your running activity, along with the route that you took. That can be incorporated in the shoe or on a fitness band on your wrist. What's fascinating is that not only do we have these fitness bands, we also are getting to the era where we will have pills which can have small chips inside them. So if you take that pill, it can tell you that you're taking your pill every day to the doctor. So there's a band that you have on your wrist, and then there will be a pill that you eat, and every time you eat that pill, it will transmit to the band on your wrist. And that requires additional abilities to communicate from your stomach to the wrist. But what's fascinating there is that now your doctor can proactively monitor whether you are taking your pills properly or not. That's the personal health monitoring regime. You can take it one level higher where you can imagine entirely connected hospitals. So if you are a patient in a room, your nurses don't need to be constantly monitoring you in person. If they have taken the readings once in a day, the systems can be sending the readings to central system, and a person can start taking those readings. So you can imagine healthcare can be revolutionized in a lot more fun ways. But what is really enticing about this particular realm is that healthcare traditionally has been all about scribbled notes. So I usually have no facts of how I was treated when I go to a different healthcare system or when I move places. Having digital records would hopefully, of course with federal regulations, make our lives much easier and would give you proactive monitoring over how your health indicators are changing. Now, another very interesting example is the automotive industry, and this is a key driver. So we have all heard about self-driving cars. We have all had some sort of GPS application that is used inside our cars. I talked about that interface that we had on our refrigerator. Similarly, BMW came up with their dashboard, which is digital, and it can connect to news, weather, GPS via some sort of satellite or cell phone connection. Why do you care about that? Now, everything that was on phone can become available on the dashboard. So it doesn't have to talk directly to the cell phone tower, it just needs to be able to talk to your phone. So this concept of connected car is definitely becoming a reality. But where it gives the most business value is where you can manage entire fleets. And here, take the example of, I have a fleet as a cab driver, if you're in New York and you manage the yellow cab system, how many of you have been in those yellow cabs? Give me some notion of how does what does the cab driver do when you're sitting there? Does he keep talking to a radio? What does he tell the person on the other side of the radio? Where he is and what he's doing, right? And then based on that, the service provider for the yellow cabs has to decide which cab to route when there's a call, right? This makes the whole system automated instead. I collect the data from the vehicle itself based on maybe the cell phone of the driver about what's the location, what's the driver metric, what's the behavior of the driver if I take the audio readings, how many hours or miles has he driven. And based on that, which the transmission can happen either via phone or via satellite, you can now have all the information in a web portal. What this has enabled already is car sharing services like Zipcar or Car2Go, which allow hourly rentals of cars, or this personal cab systems like Uber and Lyft, which are already starting to revolutionize the way we think about the automotive industry. So more importantly, if you are someone who's managing your inventory, now you can actually know where your drivers are driving around. So it is a very powerful concept of just having the car be able to transmit information about what is happening inside the car to someone who's wanting to monitor that car. So we reviewed healthcare, we reviewed connected home, we reviewed the automotive industry. Taking it one step forward, the retail and supply chain is not behind. Those verticals will be disrupted as we are already starting to see. So in the retail stores and advertising, we have this concept of location-based advertising now. So when you are closer to your coffee shop, Starbucks can send you a coupon saying, hey, this is your latte, it will be available close by. And it can also give you a coupon based on what your usage pattern is. Most retailers are now requiring you to have a profile with them, and based on your usage patterns, they say that they're giving you savings. and they also make recommendations of what objects you should buy. So if you have Safeway or some of the other big retailers, they can give you online recommendations and they can give you coupons. Same for Macy's or another, say, jeans companies and other stores. What's more fascinating is that the concept of retail outlet itself has changed. So people carry this small outlet. On the picture on the right, you have this white device called a Square device connected to the phone. What this device does, it just captures the information from your credit card and then transmits it using the phone, but it has to encrypt it in the process. So it has allowed these mobile payment concepts. So if you walk into an AT&T store today, you don't have to stand in a line. There will be like 5 helpers who will use these devices and will certainly be able to help you with helping the customers much faster. So anyone carrying this device can help. Furthermore, you no longer have to carry your wallet maybe, except for your driver's license, because suddenly you can pay with your phone with some on Google Wallet or Apple Pay or other payment platforms that are starting to appear on the mobile devices. So we talked about retail stores, and the final example I would give, which is a big driver for IoT devices itself, is the supply chain itself. So what I'm showing in the picture is SenseAware. This is a device which captures the GPS record. It captures the record of the temperature, of pressure, humidity, etc. What FedEx does is when you're packaging, say, food or some sort of items, it asks you to put these devices so that you can in real time track where each of your objects is and what is the pressure or temperature it is at. This gives you a sense of whether your item was compromised at any point if the temperature for the food was higher than what you expected it to be. It also can help you as a consumer do quality checks on the products that are delivered to you. And secondly, you have this concept of efficient manufacturing and supply chain. So how you make your supply chain efficient is that you are able to eliminate any losses due to some items spoiling. So in this example, we have when the fishes are caught and packaged in the ocean. This is an example from IBM. They're helping put RFID tags on the packaged fish, which capture the date of capture and the place of origin. By the time they put in transit, they capture the temperature on the same RFID tag. So by the time it's ready for checkout, you have both the place, time of capture, and whether the temperature was kept consistent. So you can avoid the spoilage of food, which can save almost $2 trillion, while a RFID tag merely costs 10 cents. So all of these examples give you not just a sense of, okay, I connected a cool device to internet and gave information to someone who was sitting on the other end, but it actually made the business much more efficient, cost-effective, productive, or cut the cost for the consumer by, say, cutting the number of people who were helping process the retail or giving additional quality checks. So the question here becomes is that which of these IoT platforms, which of these IoT devices will take off to the point where they will become mainstream that we no longer think back, and this would be like iPhone that I carry in my pocket every day. And the future is really in your hands. Before I go into technical details of anything, some technical challenges, I want to again throw the question back at you of which of these devices or any devices now that you can think of will disrupt the market according to you, and why do you think it will be a killer application? One sentence answer. So give it a minute to think about it and think about the examples that I just gave and if they make sense to you as in professionals or undergrads that you study about these things. Any takers for? You can make random guesses. There's no. Go ahead. Why do you think it's a killer? So the answer was contactless fleet monitoring. Why do you think it's a killer application? Very nice. So you'll be able to manage your sleep better if you had better sense of whether you were sleeping nicely or not. More takers. Go ahead. I didn't get the last part of the answer. Yeah. Okay. So the answer here was home automation. I assume you mean the thermostats and the other device. Okay. So the answer was home automation because both consumers and utilities want to do that. That's great. Other takers? Oh, which application you found really cool? Go ahead. That's a great answer. So she claims that if you have driverless cars, they will add the safety factor on the road because they're machines, they don't make mistakes. They cannot do drunk driving, and they would also eliminate insurance, maybe. So that's an entire industry eliminated, perhaps. Do you think there will be insurance for driverless cars? So probably would be less than what you pay for today. Other takers for disruptors. Go ahead. Mhm. You can almost imagine it would connect all the way to your fridge. Or the microwave. So his answer was based on, he liked the example of supply chain for food, where if the data was collected by the, at what point is food compromised, that information will be very useful for the people who are supplying food at the retailers to manage their supply chain better. And it might come, the consumers might come up with new standards that can take that information, that data, to say, hey, this is a new standard which says this company is more reputable in terms of managing its supply chain for food because there's an actual data to back it up. And all the way to maybe your fridge can capture as to this food will probably be spoiled after this date because this was the date at which it was packaged, right? So it adds enormous amount of possibilities. More takers for what do you think would be disruptive or killer applications? Yes. Mhm. Mhm. So what she just suggested, this example was based on adding some sort of control over centralized heating, which if you have centralized heating inside a building, the smart building will be able to sense that at the top floor you're only getting you're getting way more heating than the bottom floor maybe, and at that point you control the level of heating by putting some sort of control on the vent itself. So she knows of a device which can cover the vents if it's putting out too much air. Okay. So I will move forward at this point, but you get the idea that there are a lot more possibilities when you can connect. You put a computer chip and you can connect it to some sort of a connectivity device, and then you can collect that information and make it available through a web portal to, on the other side. So what does the architecture typically look like? This is one possible architecture. Not everything will mirror this architecture, but what this architecture says is that you will have a bunch of embedded devices. This is more suited towards home or enterprises. You will have a bunch of embedded devices like your fridge, like your health band, like your bulb, which is connected to some sort of a gateway. This is a mobile phone or some sort of a computing device. And the connecting platform would typically be wireless because putting wires all the way out to all the sensors can be hard. Camera sensors having much more data might use wired connections. But the sort of wireless connections can range from Wi-Fi, which is high data rate, high power consumption, to Bluetooth, which is low power and much lower data rates of hundreds of kilobits per second, to Zigbee, which is much lower data rates, and I've listed some of the other standards as well. The basic variation comes from the amount of power consumption, the range at which they operate, and the amount of data they can send to the gateway. The gateway then is connected either through a cellular or a satellite or some sort of a wired connection, which is internet connection to a cloud, which can crunch numbers, do the big data analytics things, or crunch or process numbers to come back with whatever the consumer is, whatever the end user is hoping for. That's your end application. So if you were in the industry as a professional, what you're doing is you're somehow writing some sort of software to collect data from the embedded devices to the gateway, and then processing those numbers to give a good answer to your consumers or your end users. And this end user application can be at what point was my food compromised, or what percentage of my food was compromised in the supply chain, or what is my power usage over the entire month. So all those numbers can be crunched. What this means for you is that we are moving away from the traditional way of just programming in, say, C++ or Java. We are moving towards embedded devices themselves need to be programmed in, say, embedded C or ARM, or some sort of a platform which can program those devices. That usually, earlier it was machine language, but now you have better platforms to program them. And this is where some of the companies are coming up with IoT platforms. The gateway itself can be, the way you talk to that gateway, that requires to be programmed. And then the cloud itself would be programmed in, say, Ruby, Rails, Python, one of the web application interface that you're typically, if you're familiar with those. And then when you talk back to the gateway, those are usually your traditional C++, Java, JavaScript, HTML sort of applications. So what it means for you as software, if you're developing the software aspect, you need to be familiar with way more categories of softwares or operating systems if you're trying to add your skill set in your CV. So that should give you some sense that, like, if this whole platform takes off, then you're looking at way more software skills than just C++ or Java, but the basics still matter. So given that we have some notion of architecture, this architecture would not apply to places where you have distributed set of sensors, like RFID tags that talk to maybe some sort of a satellite device and give data, and that's sent to the cloud. So you might bypass the gateway completely. So what are the key technical challenges that we expect to see in this whole regime that we have not solved with mobile applications already? One key challenge is still connectivity. So you have a heterogeneous set of connectivity that's happening all the way from RFID tags to Wi-Fi devices to Bluetooth devices. Sometimes there will be very dense deployments. So inside home or enterprise, you can expect almost 10 devices per person. And most of us have experienced the time when we go into a conference room, have too many people on the Wi-Fi, and can hardly download any data. So in dense deployments, managing the interference or the data rates that each device can get can be a problem, which almost means that you have to do localized analytics, like you only allow the device to talk to its neighboring devices, because that would limit the amount of interference that can create in general inside the room. So this introduces the notion of something called context awareness, where the device is aware of, hey, I'm a mic, I'm an audio device, and I can sense that the devices that I need to talk to are, say, the platform which will capture that audio. So this, I can talk a lot more about connectivity because this happens to be my area of specialization, but I will not go into details here. But in general, what the takeaway point is that connectivity can be a challenge for the times. So designing the right connectivity can be a challenge for someone who's designing IoT platforms. Energy management has been a traditional challenge. What is new here? So limited battery power and how you conserve it over time. That's something that sensor platforms have looked at for a long time. But what is new is that we're starting to see some sort of energy harvesting. So how do we balance out and use some of the energy harvesting platforms or circuits that we can deploy? Cell phones will definitely not get to, like, we cannot have an energy harvesting cell phone yet, but we hope so, we can get to that point in future. And the third and the most prominent one that you see in social media and newspapers all the time is this concept of privacy. Who can see this data and what can this data be used for? And this is something that's a constant challenge for both the enterprises and the users themselves, like whether the enterprise should use the data for something good. I mean, it will give you personalized recommendations, so it's all good. They have good intentions at heart, or can that data be misused in any way? So where do you draw the line as consumers? This is a big debate, and it's very hard to solve it in the ethical regime. But hopefully, as engineers, if you're aware of how this affects, then you can make the right decisions. At this point, I would like to encourage you to think about some of the technical challenges. I was hoping to, we are almost at 40 minutes. I was hoping to cover some actual case study for privacy, but I also want the audience to ask questions. So let's think through technical challenges, take some questions, and if I have time, I'll go through privacy case study. Yeah. That's a great question. So when you say, let me repeat the question first. So the question was that, what do we think of storage? Because as more devices come on, how much storage do they need to keep on each device? How long do they need to keep the data logs? And whether all of it should be uploaded to the cloud and kept in the cloud itself? And I think the answer there, there's no solved answer. It really depends on the application. Some of the data logs, you want to keep it for much longer time, others you don't. But more specifically, if you have video data, you want to keep the logs only for a certain period of time, perhaps in the cloud. On the device itself, storage is cheap, so you can probably go up to terabytes and store the video recorded per device, but you need to have some sort of an indexing or tagging mechanism to say this data is probably the most relevant if the cloud were to query it. So it almost introduces this notion of being able to search across devices or across sensors that are recording these. So you can imagine almost local platforms that would capture the story. If you have RFID tags, they're probably sending just kilobits of data. So you have to have some notion of a context. So if I go back to the example of supply chain management, I probably need data to the point of the actual product that was packaged makes it to the consumer, and at that point I can process the numbers to say, okay, I'm doing 50% or 90% of my supplies are not getting spoiled. So it really boils down to what the end application is and what they want to do with the data. If you want to restore all the data, it's doable for low data rate applications. For high data rate applications, putting everything out to the cloud means wastage of resources, is my personal opinion. More questions or technical challenges you can think of? That's a great question, and that's something that has been, I didn't highlight it here, but the idea of naming, addressing, and being able to identify the devices that are connected to the internet is a big challenge. With IPv6, we have come up with a much higher number of addresses, and we're transitioning from IPv4 protocol to IPv6 protocol, so you can number a lot more devices, yet the idea of giving everyone an IP address, as we do for cell phones today, is still going to be hard. At which point you can almost imagine that there might be a concept of some sort of clusters or localized clusters which get one IP address, and then within the cluster there's some sort of management. So how this manifests, again, depends on the application, but within a room you have some sort of a personal area network going, and the wide area network only has one IP address for personal area network. That might be the sort of platforms that we might evolve to. We have not reached the stage where we've run out of IP addresses yet. But that's a great point that you brought up. Other technical challenges that you can think of? Yes? Can you repeat your question, please?
So, with like networks of sensors, we have issues in flow between sensors to communicate between models.
So are you referring to the protocol itself, or are you like? So the question is, would there be challenges in the data flow itself from sensors to gateway to the cloud, to the end user application? That's a great question. So the way you package your data, that needs to be defined in all of these interfaces somehow. And anytime two devices need to talk, they need to agree on, I'm transmitting this packet, which is in, say, Internet Protocol. That's the header, and that's my data, and then that's how I'm storing it. So that needs to be defined. And what is happening that I personally saw in smart grid industry was they were coming up with open flow standards, which would allow most of the devices to be able to talk to some sort of a gateway. So there are standards that are being developed, but there is proliferation of too many standards sometimes. But you probably know this already, that there are a lot of standards which try to handle the interconnection between devices or the interface between devices, and having one common standard is hard right now.
I'm giving a talk on this subject tomorrow. There were at least 150 companies and consortia trying to tell us how the Internet standards will be defined. So it's going to be Darwinian evolution for the next few years.
So that gives you some idea of Joe's talk tomorrow. He'll tell you more about this. More questions? Anything you can think of related to the technical challenges? This was a very basic introduction. I didn't go into details for almost anything, but I was hoping to give you flavors. Any questions that might have cropped in your mind so far? No? How are we doing our time right now? Okay. Okay, then I will try to conclude instead of going through the case study, but I will give you a flavor of that. So this was a case study that I was going to give you about how smart meters collect readings in real time from a home and then transfer it to the utility. And it can enable a lot of cool applications, which I will let you read up on your own. But what I wanted to convey to you is the sort of privacy concerns it can raise. So this is the profile of data collected in real time from a single household over a 24-hour time period, and it is showing the power usage in kilowatts on the y-axis and 24-hour scale on the x-axis. What you can see is that if you have defined granularity of time for each consumer, you can almost start predicting activities like when the usage was low, it's probably night. When the usage was high, was it breakfast time, or was it water heater turned on, or was some evening activity like cooking happening, or heating was turned on a much higher scale. Well, those are very innocuous activities that you don't care about. But what's hard is that if you can almost predict things like, did you leave late for work? Or if you had a kid at home that was alone, or were you home during your sick leave? It can almost start doing these sort of things. And the way it can measure this data is by correlating it with other data sources. Like if you don't usually have your electricity turned on during the day, then on the single day when you have your electricity turned on during the daytime when you're usually away for work, that would give information about, okay, I sick leave, you were at home. Or same, you can determine the activity that's required for a single person versus the entire family. So you can almost predict whether you left your child at home alone or whether there was more than one person at home. So it starts giving you a lot more information. There are other examples that have been studied in this paper, but this can be used for good things where they can give you ways to save energy, but it can also be used by hackers or by third-party companies to give you marketing material, which can be both for good or bad. So as engineers, we will have to make decisions. Please go ahead.
Just an example, I believe Region 6 also has a sustainable technology conference. At the last one, there were people from Southern California Edison. They were doing this. And the emotional response of their customers was not, are you going to make my house cheaper to rent? They were saying, you're going to let me in and stay in my house. They're scared, perhaps for the wrong reason, but you understand why people are worried about it.
So it is a big concern. The reason I'm bringing it up is only to, as engineers, as you go into professional workforce, you need to be aware that these are concerns that you need to think about as you're designing some of these systems. What's more interesting is that if you anonymize this data, if you just take off the label of the person, will that solve the problem? And it has been shown in social media and even in some of the other data sources that just taking the consumption trace from the person's identity does not solve the problem. Because if I were to correlate with this another data source, so for example, there are houses in a neighborhood that usually have similar energy consumption profile. If I observe the household for a little bit and see high consumption in certain household, then I can almost identify that this is the house that was having that sort of energy consumption. So it requires just one other data source. If I have access to that, I can correlate it. So just anonymizing data is not enough. Right? Does that mean that I need to go all the way to like encrypting data from the point when it starts at the smart meter? Will that help? Or are there other solutions? Now, there are other solutions, but I'm not going to go into details at this point. But hopefully that conveys the idea of like privacy is a big concern. So recapping, we talked about almost 50 billion devices are expected to be connected to internet by 2020, and they will be in smart homes, they will be in healthcare, they will be in better advertising or reaching out to you as consumers, making the supply chains or manufacturing processes more efficient. We've talked about why this is probably the right time because we are connecting everything to internet, whether we call it Internet of Things or not. We talked about one example architecture to give you some sense of the way these platforms will be developed. There might be better ways to develop those platforms as the companies come up with easier ways that make it more modular. And we talked about some of the technical challenges, and our audience brought up some really nice challenges related to storage and scalability as well. So at this point, I would leave you with this slide where future is really your imagination. You can have vending machines connected, you can have even beer breweries connected to the internet, you can have robots inside a factory connected to the internet, and you can go for safer highways, as one of our audience members pointed out earlier. So it really is your imagination. Okay, this was the end of the presentation.